Bonjour à tous. Later today, I'll be in the House of Commons to speak about what I know is on a lot of Canadians' minds. I'll have more to say then, but for now, I want to address the role that we, as leaders and allies, have to play. As politicians, we must listen and learn about what needs to be done to fight racism, discrimination, and justice. Because being an ally is about taking a hard look at our existing systems and being committed to doing the necessary work to fix them. Our government is ready to take action. Parce que ce qu'on voit en ce moment, ce ne sont pas des cas isolés. C'est le résultat de systèmes qui, beaucoup trop souvent, tolèrent, normalisent et perpétuent l'injustice et l'inégalité à l'endroit des personnes de couleur. Non seulement à l'autre côté de la frontière, mais ici, chez nous, dans nos communautés, dans notre pays. Ça doit cesser. Et les gens qui n'ont jamais subi le racisme ou la discrimination ont un rôle très important à jouer dans tout ça. Nous avons la responsabilité de reconnaître les injustices dans nos vies et de poser des gestes concrets qui témoignent de notre solidarité envers nos concitoyens. As we move through this pandemic, I know a lot of Canadians are wondering when their community will be able to get back up and running. The short answer is that it depends on where you live and how things are going for your city or your region. That's why every province and territory has its own plan to restart. But as I said yesterday, as a country, defeating COVID-19 is something we must do together. Our government knows that, which is why I've been collaborating with the premiers on a shared approach moving forward. Yesterday, we took a first step with some funding for municipalities. Of course, help for cities and towns is just one piece of the puzzle. We know that provinces and territories also need support on securing personal protective equipment and other vital supplies. And here, too, we're stepping up. Since day one, our government has been working around the clock to secure vital PPE. Just take the fact that we've received more than 100 million surgical masks and nearly 40 million gloves, and are continuing to send a whole range of supplies to the provinces and territories. Or that we've signed a contract for millions of syringes to have the supplies needed once a vaccine is ready. Working with suppliers from around the world is key to keeping Canadians safe. But at the end of the day, one of the best ways to ensure we have what we need, well, it's to make it right here at home. Our government has been working with Canadian manufacturers to make that happen. Over half of our face shields were produced in Canada. Working with companies like Canadian Shield, which retooled to manufacture visors and went from 10 employees to 200, is a win-win. Not only do we build our capacity to make these supplies at home, we support good jobs for Canadians. And the same goes for testing. We're now funding 4 Canadian companies working on what may be breakthrough solutions for COVID-19 rapid testing. Deep Biologics in Guelph, Nicoya Life Sciences in Kitchener, Forian in Edmonton, and Metabolic Insights in Kelowna. This is on top of the support we've already provided for testing, including for precision biomonitoring, as they set up a test kit manufacturing progress, but we have to keep going. As we restart the economy, demand for supplies will go up, and Canada must be able to keep up. So whether it's N95 masks or ICU equipment, we will continue our work with the provinces and territories on the supplies we need going forward. Que ce soit pour obtenir de l'équipement de protection individuelle ou soutenir les municipalités, on va continuer de travailler avec les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires pour assurer la sécurité des gens. On a déjà distribué des centaines de milliers d'articles aux travailleurs de première ligne depuis le début de la crise. Mais on sait qu'à long terme, une des meilleures façons de s'assurer qu'on possède le matériel dont on a besoin, c'est de le fabriquer chez nous. Donc, au cours des derniers mois, on a réalisé des investissements ciblés pour augmenter notre capacité de production. Aujourd'hui, près de la moitié de nos stocks d'écrans faciaux ont été fabriqués au Canada. On fait également des progrès en ce qui concerne le dépistage. On finance maintenant 4 entreprises canadiennes dont le travail pourrait mener à des percées majeures en ce qui concerne le dépistage rapide de la COVID-19. Et on appuie aussi l'entreprise Precision Biomonitoring en Ontario, qui est en train de mettre sur pied une usine qui va fabriquer des trousses de dépistage. On s'en va dans la bonne direction, mais on doit en faire plus. Avec la relance de l'économie, la demande pour ce type de produit va augmenter. C'est normal. On va donc continuer de travailler avec les provinces et les territoires pour faire en sorte qu'ils aient assez d'équipements de protection individuelle. To support Canadian jobs, to restart the economy, we have to work together. And it's not just as governments, but across sectors, too. Last month, we set up the Industry Strategy Council. Led by Minister Baines and chaired by Monique Leroux, their mandate is to take a deeper dive into the specific challenges and pressures that different industries are facing. Today, Minister Baines announced the Council's membership, 9 business leaders from across the country, who each represent a different pillar of our economy. This team will bring together government and industry to meet and discuss regularly as we plan our path forward. Depuis le début de la crise, on constate à quel point l'entraide et la solidarité sont importantes. Mais ça ne s'applique pas juste à la pandémie. Il y a tellement d'enjeux dans le monde qui ne peuvent pas être réglés par un seul gouvernement ou un seul pays. Je pense par exemple à la lutte contre les changements climatiques. C'est une priorité pour notre gouvernement et on va continuer de poser des gestes pour protéger l'avenir de nos enfants et de notre planète. Mais on ne peut pas y arriver seul. Et la bonne nouvelle, c'est qu'on n'a pas à agir seul. Par exemple, l'Alliance Powering Past Coal, qui réunit plus de 100 membres à travers le monde, fait un travail incroyable pour améliorer la qualité de l'air. Tout à l'heure, l'Alliance, fondée par le Canada et le Royaume-Uni, dévoilera ses nouveaux membres, dont le mouvement Desjardins. Desjardins va devenir la première institution financière nord-américaine à se joindre à l'Alliance. Ici encore, les Canadiens montrent la marche à suivre. Et notre gouvernement va toujours être là pour soutenir ce type d'initiative. I want to end this morning by recognizing that today is la Festa de la Repubblica, which is the perfect time to wish everyone a happy Italian Heritage Month. For generations, Italian Canadians have made our country a stronger, better place. So it comes as no surprise that during this pandemic, just like always, this community is stepping up to help. Maybe you've been taking groceries over to an elderly neighbor. Or maybe you were one of many who helped raise $1 million for the Italian Red Cross. However you're lending a hand, thank you. It just goes to show that we are stronger together. Les valeurs qu'incarne la communauté italienne, le travail, la famille, la générosité, sont importantes pour nous tous. Aujourd'hui et tous les jours, on reconnaît les nombreuses façons dont cette communauté contribue à notre pays et à nos vies. Joyeux mois du patrimoine italien. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On va commencer la période de questions aujourd'hui par le
I rise today to address what so many people of color live with every day. Over the past few days, we've seen horrific reports of police violence against black men and women south of the border. But these are not isolated incidents or elsewhere problems. Prejudice, discrimination, and violence is a lived reality for far too many people. It is a result of systems which far too often condone, normalize, perpetrate, and perpetuate inequality and injustice against people of color. As a country, We are not concerned bystanders simply watching what is happening next door. We are part of it. The calls for justice, for equality, for peace have found echo in our communities because anti-Black racism is happening here, everywhere in Canada, every single day. This is something that our own staff, cabinet ministers and colleagues face even in these halls. Over the past few days, I've heard many of these personal stories directly from them. And I'm not just talking about acts of violence, I'm also talking about microaggressions, which many of us may not even see. That is the daily reality of far too many racialized Canadians, and it needs to stop. When it comes to being an ally, I have made serious mistakes in the past, mistakes which I deeply regret and continue to learn from. And I want to thank my colleagues, community leaders, and fellow Canadians for opening my eyes to what is really going on in our communities and helping me better understand both privilege and power. I'm not perfect, but not being perfect is not a free pass to not do the right thing. It's not an excuse to not step up, to stand up for each other, to be an ally. I know that for so many people listening right now, the last thing you want to hear is another speech on racism from a white politician. I'm not here today to describe a reality I do not know or speak to a pain I have not felt. I'm here because I want you to know that our government is listening. We hear your calls for justice, equality, and accountability. We acknowledge your frustration, your anger, your heartbreak. We see you. Depuis notre arrivée au pouvoir, notre gouvernement a posé plusieurs gestes concrets pour combattre le racisme envers les Noirs, la discrimination systémique et l'injustice à travers le pays. Nous travaillons directement avec les communautés et leurs leaders pour combler les écarts qui persistent chez nous. Par exemple, nous avons accordé 9 millions de dollars pour soutenir les programmes destinés aux jeunes Canadiens noirs. Nous avons fait des investissements importants pour permettre à l'Agence de la santé publique d'offrir plus de services de santé mentale à ceux qui ont subi le racisme ou un traumatisme intergénérationnel. Nous aidons les organismes communautaires à obtenir du financement pour acheter du matériel ou louer de l'espace. Et nous avons créé le secrétariat de lutte contre le racisme qui dispose d'une enveloppe de 4,6 millions de dollars pour éliminer les obstacles systémiques, notamment en matière d'emploi, de justice et de participation sociale qui perpétuent l'injustice. Nous avons fait des progrès, mais on sait que le travail est loin d'être terminé. Over the past 5 years, our government has worked with communities to recognize and address injustices. We've taken action to support community organizations, invest in better data, and fight racism. And while we've made some progress, there is still so much more to do. Because here are the facts in Canada. Anti-Black racism is real. Unconscious bias is real. Systemic discrimination is real. For millions of Canadians, it is their daily lived reality. And the pain and damage it causes is real, too. Mr. Speaker, every Canadian who has felt the weight of oppression, every student who has the courage to demand a better future, every person who marches and posts and reads and fights from Vancouver to Montreal to Halifax expects more than the status quo. They expect more and deserve better. Le gouvernement du Canada a beaucoup de travail à faire, mais on est prêt. On est prêt à travailler avec nos collègues de l'opposition, les leaders communautaires et les Canadiens pour faire de notre pays un endroit plus égale et plus juste. Le racisme n'a jamais sa place chez nous et nous allons tout faire pour l'éradiquer d'un océan à l'autre. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Over the past week, we have all been affected by the heartbreaking killing of George Floyd in the United States. The video is painful to watch. No one should ever have to plead for help while a crime is being committed, ignored by other members of law enforcement. La tragédie a déclenché des marches, des sit-ins, des protestations et malheureusement des émeutes. Mais j'espère surtout qu'elle a suscité des conversations. Le racisme est réel, douloureux et inacceptable. Mr. Speaker, the tragedy has sparked marches, sit-ins, protests, and sadly, in some cases, riots. But I hope more importantly, it has sparked conversations. Racism is real, it is painful, and it is wrong. No one should ever feel unsafe because of the color of their skin, especially around police officers who have a duty and responsibility to uphold the law for all. Here in Canada, we are fortunate to live in a country that is welcoming, tolerant, and inclusive. Canada was a beacon of freedom to so many escaping slavery during the U.S. Civil War. Our nation has benefited immensely from great Canadians who overcame prejudices and discrimination to serve their communities and make Canada a better country. Lincoln Alexander, elected as a Conservative in 1968, was the first Black member of Parliament and went on to become the first Black cabinet minister. John Ware was born into slavery in South Carolina, but following the American Civil War, was a leading figure in bringing the first cattle to Alberta and spearheading the ranching industry that would become the backbone of the province. Josiah Henson, who escaped slavery to become a thriving businessman in Ontario. And of course, Viola Desmond, who challenged segregation in Nova Scotia. Black Canadians throughout history have not just built this nation with their contributions, they have also represented Canada with excellence and pride on the world stage. Like Harry Jerome, who represented Canada in 3 Olympic Games and won a bronze medal in 1964. He would go on to become a teacher in British Columbia, once again serving with excellence to try to make a better world for the next generation. And throughout our history, Black Canadians have put their lives on the line for their fellow Canadians, bravely serving around the world in our armed forces. While there are many things we can point to in our history with pride, that is not to say that we have a perfect record. Nor are we immune to the threat of racism or that anti-Black racism is just an American problem. Canada has had its own dark episodes of racism that cannot be ignored, and sadly, not just in our past. Every day, there are people who experience discrimination or racism in some form. Throughout this pandemic, we have seen a troubling spike in anti-Asian racism. No one should be attacked in their community or targeted on the bus because of the color of their skin. Nor should places of worship be broken into and desecrated like the synagogue in Montreal. Les conservateurs condamnent tous les actes d'antisémitisme, de racisme et de la discrimination. Dans un pays pacifique et libre comme le Canada, il n'y a absolument pas de place pour l'intolérance, le racisme ou l'extrémisme de quelque nature que ce soit. Conservatives condemn all acts of anti-Semitism, racism, and discrimination. But the violence and the destruction we have seen in response are not the answer. Millions of people are protesting peacefully across the United States and in Canada. And we must always protect the rights of people who are protesting peacefully and within the law for a just cause, and separate them from those who exploit tragedies to commit acts of violence. As Mr. Floyd's brother Terrence said, violence will not bring his brother back. Instead, he has called for peace and justice and urged the crowds to educate themselves and to vote. Out of such tragedy, Mr. Speaker, that is a powerful message about how each and every one of us can use our democratic rights to effect change. In a peaceful and free country like Canada, There's absolutely no room for intolerance, racism, and extremism of any kind. We are not born believing that we are better than one another. We are all created in the image and likeness of God, and because of that, we are all equal, and infinite value exists in each and every one of us. Canada is an incredibly diverse country. Canada is a nation of immigrants that stands on the traditional territories of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Waves of newcomers have come to Canada for a better life because our country is built on a rock-solid foundation of enduring values, democratic institutions, the rule of law, and fundamental and universal human rights. Tous sont venus ici parce que le Canada est bâti sur des valeurs solides, des institutions démocratiques et il respecte la primauté du droit et des droits de la personne fondamentaux et universels. We must absolutely protect these values because they are what set us apart. They allow Canada to offer what so many other countries simply cannot. There are those who say that diversity is our strength, and that is true, but it doesn't quite capture the full picture. Diversity is the result of our strength, and our strength is, and always has been, our freedom. Notre diversité est un produit de notre force, et notre force est et sera toujours notre liberté. The freedom for people to preserve and pass on their cultural traditions and the opportunity to live in peace with those around them. The freedom to live your life with equality under the law, regardless of your race or ethnic background. And the economic freedom that so many governments around the world deny their people. It is that economic freedom that ensures that hard work pays off, that gives people the ability to work towards their dreams and choose their own path in life. Together, generations of Canadians who trace their roots back to countries around the world have built Canada into truly the greatest country on earth, a true north, strong and free. Afin de garantir que notre peuple reste libre, nous devons continuer à lutter contre les atteintes à nos libertés, y compris le racisme et toute forme de brutalité et d'injustice au Canada et partout dans le monde. Les droits des minorités doivent être protégés. La liberté de religion doit être protégée. La liberté d'expression et le droit de manifester pacifiquement doivent être protégés. In order to ensure that we, as a people, remain free, we must continue to fight efforts to infringe upon our freedoms, including racism and all forms of brutality and injustice in Canada and around the world. Minority rights must be protected. Religious freedoms must be protected. Freedom of expression and the right to peaceful protest must be protected. As John Diefenbaker said, I am Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship in my own way, free to stand for what I think right, free to oppose what I believe wrong, and free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all mankind. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
L'honorable député de Beloeil-Chambly.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. George Floyd n'est pas une victime de racisme, il est une autre victime de racisme. Dans un moment de crise où l'outrage a raison de la prudence et de la peur face à la maladie pour des milliers de personnes qui, malgré tout, s'emparent de la rue pour exprimer cet outrage, nous, ici, en politique, allons devoir être prudents, encore une fois, dans l'usage des mots, parce que nous sommes particulièrement portés sur l'interprétation du propos d'autrui dans un sens autre que celui qu'il aurait pu vouloir véhiculer. Aujourd'hui, notre devoir, je dirais presque notre seul devoir, est d'exprimer notre solidarité, notre tristesse, notre indignation, notre colère, mais aussi et surtout, et je pense en le disant à tous mes amis, à toutes mes connaissances qui sont de la merveilleuse communauté noire du Québec et d'Amérique, notre amitié. Nous devons essayer d'être entendus de tous les humains. Et chaque fois qu'on parle de ça, il y a un petit bout de moi qui ressort, qui est cet anthropologue non pratiquant mais impénitent. qui veut nous rappeler que les races n'existent pas. Il s'agit de la fréquence de manifestation de certains traits génétiques favorisés par la géographie et l'histoire, et qui, à leur tour, façonnent des cultures. Le racisme s'exprime d'abord et avant tout par l'agression de ce qu'on présume être la culture d'autrui. La différence qui, trop souvent, et à chaque fois que la différence fait peur, c'est, bien sûr, une fois de trop. Nous devons apprendre à vivre l'égalité dans la diversité, qui est en soi quelque chose d'extraordinaire. Les gouvernements d'Amérique ont tous été racistes. Et le racisme s'est forcément exprimé à un certain moment donné de leur histoire, dans leurs institutions. Ils y ont laissé des traces. Et c'est la seule chose qu'on a le droit d'appeler racisme systémique ou discrimination systémique. Je m'inquiète que quiconque suggère que nous soyons tous et collectivement portés vers la discrimination systémique ou que quiconque prétende être le rempart de vertu entre nous et nos victimes. Je pense que le gouvernement canadien n'est pas raciste, que le gouvernement québécois n'est pas raciste, que les gouvernements de nos municipalités ne le sont pas non plus, mais qu'il peut rester des traces de choses odieuses dans nos institutions et qui colorent nos relations avec des gens d'origine différente ou des gens qui étaient ici bien longtemps avant nous. Donc, le racisme systémique existe probablement. Il ne doit pas dénoncer les individus, mais appeler à la relecture de nos règles pour en extirper ce qu'il pourrait y rester de discriminatoire. Mais aujourd'hui appartient à George Floyd. Aujourd'hui appartient aux Noirs des États-Unis. Aujourd'hui appartient aux Noirs du Québec et du Canada. On ne fait pas de politique aux portes des funérailles. On se recueille. On laisse s'exprimer l'indignation et la tristesse. On laisse la rue à ceux qui ont besoin de parler d'une seule voix, dans la paix. Tout ce qui est paisible est légitime. Rien de ce qui est violent n'est légitime. Le premier ministre a annoncé un désir de mesures concrètes pour lutter contre le racisme. La première doit être de manifester notre solidarité et notre amitié. Et pour du concret, je lui propose de traiter en priorité et de façon accélérée les dossiers des demandeurs de statut de réfugiés, surtout haïtiens, surtout noirs, mais aussi d'autres origines, qui ont exprimé en se portant en première ligne leur désir de participer à la nation québécoise. Il en a le pouvoir, il en a le devoir, et s'il a besoin du Parlement, faisons-le demain. Faisons-le tout de suite. Ainsi, les mots deviendront des gestes et la suite n'en sera que plus crédible. En attendant, notre devoir est de nous dresser pour ceux qui ont peur, contre ceux qui leur font peur. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bravo.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Énormément de Canadiens et Canadiens ont été ébranlés de voir la violence en lien avec le meurtre de George Floyd. Le meurtre de George Floyd est un dur rappel que le racisme anti-noir est encore bien présent et frappe dur. Le racisme anti-noir n'est pas seulement présent aux États-Unis, il est présent ici au Canada. Le racisme systémique envers les Noirs, les Autochtones et bien d'autres minorités visibles est bien présent. Profilage racial, inégalité économique, inégalité sociale, discrimination à l'embauche, discrimination à l'embauche, banalisation de la violence, surincarcération et j'en passe. Ça n'avance pas parce que gouvernement après gouvernement, ils préfèrent les belles paroles aux actions concrètes. Quand vient le temps d'agir, ils n'ont pas le courage, ils n'ont pas la volonté d'agir. Les gens ressentent beaucoup de douleur et de frustration, mais nous pouvons transformer cela en action et en justice. Nous devons faire plus qu'appeler à la paix. Je crois que nous devons appeler à la justice. La justice est la seule voie vers la création d'un monde meilleur. When people around the world saw the killing of George Floyd, it left all of us shaken to our core. It was chilling. The casual violence of anti-Black racism. The callous taking of another human being's life. It hurt to the core. There was pain, there was sadness, and rightly so, there is anger. There is frustration. This isn't just an American problem, this is just as much a Canadian problem as well. And something that continues to exist across our country. Anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism is real. People have suffered in violence. Indigenous people, Black people have suffered violence and have been killed at the hands of police here in Canada. I think about Regis Korchinski-Paquette in Toronto and the calls for justice for Regis, a trans Black woman who was killed in suspicious circumstances in interaction with the police. I think about Stuart Kevin Andrews, a young Indigenous man killed in an interaction with the police in Winnipeg. And the anger and the frustration is how many more people need to die before there's action? How many more speeches will be made? How many more protests need to happen before something is done? How many more times will people plead to breathe? How many more times will they plead to live? What we're talking about is basic human dignity. How many more voices have to ask, demand, plead, beg for basic human dignity? People are angry. They're feeling like enough is enough. Why do they need to keep on asking? Why do Black people, why do Indigenous people need to keep on asking to be treated like a human? Why? You know what? People are done with pretty speeches, particularly pretty speeches from people in power that could do something about it right now if they wanted to. I'm standing in a hall of power, in the Chamber of Commons, with a Prime Minister who has the power to not just say pretty words, to actually do something about this. The Prime Minister of this country has the power to go beyond pretty words and pretty speeches and do something. Now, I don't have all the answers. I don't think any one person does. We're going to have to come up with those solutions together. But there are certainly some things that we do know. Martin Luther King said, "Peace is not merely the absence of tension. Peace is the presence of justice." That's what we need. We need justice. Killer Mike extolled that people should plan, plot, strategize, organize, and then mobilize. Cardi B put it this way: another way for the people to take power, and I don't want to make everything political, but it is what it is by voting. So what do we vote for? We vote for a government to take action. So I call on the Prime Minister in this Hall of Power, if the Prime Minister believes that Black lives matter, will the Prime Minister commit to ending racial profiling in our country? If the Prime Minister believes that Black lives matter, will the Prime Minister commit to ending the over-policing of Black bodies? If the Prime Minister truly believes that Black lives matter, will the Prime Minister commit to ending the over-incarceration of Black people in this country. Now, if the Prime Minister truly believes that Black Lives Matter, will he commit to ensuring that there's race-based data to make better decisions? Will he commit to ensuring that there's access to education, to health resources? The Prime Minister has the power to do all these things right now. The Prime Minister simply needs to get it done. If the Prime Minister truly believes that Indigenous lives matter, then similarly, the Prime Minister must commit today to ending the racial profiling of Indigenous people, the over-policing of Indigenous people, and the over-incarceration of Indigenous people. If the Prime Minister truly believed that Indigenous lives matter, the Prime Minister could stop taking Indigenous kids to court. The Prime Minister could stop delaying the action on the calls for justice for the murdered, missing, and Indigenous women and girls. If the Prime Minister believed that Indigenous lives matter, he could ensure that there's clean drinking water, access to justice, and education, and housing right now. People are angry because they're frustrated and done with pretty words. People are angry because they're done with pretty speeches from people in power who could do something about it right now. People don't want peace. They don't want an absence of tension. People want the presence of justice. People want justice. People deserve justice. People need justice, and justice is what people will get. Nothing less will do. Thank you.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is indeed a difficult day. It's a difficult week. It's been difficult weeks. I stand here and want to begin by acknowledging we're all on the traditional territory of the Algonquin peoples, and again to say miigwech. Because on a day like this, when we're focusing on something so painful that it really is beyond partisanship and should bind us together as a people that say we cannot tolerate racism, not in this country, but we know it's here. As Prime Minister just said, le racisme n'a jamais sa place chez nous. But we know it's here. We know it's living with us. So we are facing in this pandemic two dangerous, invisible viruses. One is Corona-19, and the other one we've tolerated far too long, which is race-based hatred, hate speech, and anti-Black racism. And yes, Black Lives Matter. I want to just do nothing but chant it in this place till we all stand together and say, Black Lives Matter. What we're seeing in the murder of George Floyd, exactly as my colleague from the Bloc Québécois said, pas une victime, mais une autre victime. Victime après victime après victime, avec les noms. Non pas, nous devons pas oublier les noms. The first time a Black man was killed where his last words were, I can't breathe, was in 2014, was Eric Garner. His mother did interviews this week. Imagine what she's going through as George Floyd dies, also on video, saying, I can't breathe. And the people who were stopping him from breathing, his killers, are the police. In the case of Eric Garner, the police were fired but never charged. George Floyd's murder, at least there's one killer who's been charged, but it doesn't do anything to ease the pain, nor does it, as my friend from the NDP has said, nor does it quench the thirst for justice, because that's what people are crying out for. They're crying out for justice. And the names just keep cascading. I had to look it up. I thought, when was it that poor young man who was jogging was murdered by the father and son in the pickup truck? Ahmed Aubrey, murdered by a retired policeman and his son out in their pickup truck in February. That's when it was. Breonna Taylor in Louisville, murdered in her own home. In Louisville, that's how they pronounce it there. Murdered in her own home by cops who thought she might have drugs there. They searched and she didn't. What on earth allows this to keep happening over and over again? I looked at a site called Just Security, and I thought these words from reporter Mia Bloom, who happens to be Canadian, were pretty clear of what puts you at risk of death in the United States of America. but also Canada. Quote, driving while black, jogging while black, reporting while black, bird watching while black, selling lemonade while black can get you killed. And the killers, far too often, are wearing a uniform. And I want to go back to the words reporting while black, because this is something else we've seen in the last 4 days that we've never seen before, which is the deliberate targeting of reporters by police. Over 100 reporters have been injured in the United States in the last 4 days. One woman lost her eye. These are serious injuries. Sometimes reporters get in the way of riots and whatnot, but this is different. This is another element altogether. And it seems in this place, when we have speeches and pretty words to denounce racism, that we do it in a kind of a cycle. So after Colton Bushey's murder, we talked about anti-Indigenous racism. We talked about the threat to our Indigenous brothers and sisters across this country who also face racism on a daily basis. We talk about the fact that they are disproportionately in our prisons. Just within the last day, the report came down on the killing of Dale Culver in Prince George at the hands of the Prince George RCMP. This Indigenous young man was 35 years old, pepper sprayed till he couldn't breathe. There will be charges in this case. That's the recommendation that just came down. But we kind of go through sequential moments where we can say, Islamophobia is not okay. 6 Muslims at prayer in Quebec City were murdered. We can all stand up and say we denounce Islamophobia. Or we can denounce anti-trans violence against individual trans people who are murdered. We denounce anti-Semitism when we see a scrawled anti-Semitic graffiti on the door of an Ottawa rabbi's home. We denounce it. But can we get to the root of it? Anti-Asian racism. We're seeing it on the increase, as the Honourable Leader of the Conservative Party mentioned in recent days. We're seeing all this happen, and we want to be good allies. We want to be a good ally to the family of Regis Korchinski-Paquette. We want to be a good ally. I'm a woman of privilege. I got it by the mere random accident of birth. I was born to white parents. Privilege is being white. We have to study our privilege. We have to acknowledge our privilege, and we have to know, as the Prime Minister said, we're not perfect, but it doesn't give us a free pass to ignore that we have to stand up. We have to speak out. I'm sitting so close to my friend here, our Minister, Ahmed Hussein. I say your name out loud, but your tweets brought me to tears. That this fine man faces racism in his own riding, that his 3 beautiful black boys have people turn away or clutch their purse, or they're a little worried when the kids are around. It sounds exactly what the Prime Minister just called the microaggressions that many of us may not even see. So we can look at our own conduct and our own behavior. So in looking at these things, there's something I want to say. We look at all these things that are happening and we wonder, what can we do about it? When you see a bully, when you hear hate speech, we have to speak up. We have to speak out. And we have to say that the President of the United States is fomenting hatred and violence, and it's shameful and shocking that he would grab a Bible. They cleared peaceful protesters on a Washington street with tear gas so that Donald Trump could pose with a Bible in front of an Episcopal church. The Episcopal Bishop of Washington had this to say, because she's a good ally. In no way do we support the President's incendiary response to a wounded, grieving nation. In faithfulness to our Savior, who lived a life of nonviolence and sacrificial love, we align ourselves with those seeking justice for the death of George Floyd. That's what we must do in this place. We must acknowledge and speak up for justice for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, where the report languishes a year later. We must stand up for justice, and we must examine something very worrying. The U.S. FBI warned in 2006 that white supremacist groups were targeting police forces and joining them. If we're looking for real actions, things we can do in this place, I call on us to have an inquiry and an examination to root out white supremacist groups in Canada and identify them for what they are, a terrorist threat in our midst, and make sure they're not in our police forces. Because if there's one thing scarier than a white supremacist with a gun, it's a white supremacist with a gun in uniform. Please, God, there are things we can do. Please, God, we love each other, take care of each other, regardless of the color of our skin. Pray for the United States of America. It's a country being ripped apart. And the ripping and the tearing is done by people who should at this very time be consoling and leading and inspiring. Pray. Pray for Canada. Pray for each and every one of our beautiful Black baby girls, baby boys, the Indigenous baby girls and baby boys, the Asian kid, wherever you look, reach out and be a good ally. Stand up and say, with my body, I get between you and the cops. We have to be good allies. Right now, they're just pretty words. Thank you for listening.